Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Happy to see everyone this morning. Thank you all for attending this morning, Sunday school. I'm going to go ahead and get right into it because we are traveling this morning, so I want to prolong the time so we can make sure we get there on time. But as we continue our fall quarter lesson, titled Success and Failure. And we are still in our first unit titled Obedience and Success. And today, our title for today's lesson is Ehud Frees Israel, and that comes from Judges chapter 3. So we're going to be in Judges chapter 3, that's verse 15 through 25 and 29 through 30. So I hope everyone is well this morning. So the last few lessons, we talked about a time when Israel began to take over the land that God promised them through Abraham. This is right after the Israelites spent 40 years in the wilderness. God has finally given them the land that He promised them hundreds of years ago. Yeah. So they began to take this land. We talked last week's lesson on how God gave them Jericho. God gave them Jericho. Mm-hmm. And I say God gave them Jericho because they pretty much didn't have to do much to take over the city. True. God had them march, had the priests and the army, Israel's army, He had them march around Jericho's wall for 7 straight days. Mm-hmm. On that 7th day, they marched around again. The priests, the army, and the ark of God. They marched around 7 times again. And on that 7th time, after that 7th time, they shouted and blew the trumpets and with a loud sound. And all of a sudden, just at once, the wall came falling down. And all the people were frightened because, even though Israel wasn't just the biggest army, this crash and this loud noise, people thought that was a huge army coming. So they panicked, and so the Israelites were taking over this land that God had promised them. So the Israelites continued to capture more land, and as they began to take over the land that God promised them years ago. One thing in common for the Israelites is they do great things and then they fall back into their sinful ways. Yep. And the same thing here, God wanted them to destroy the nations in this land, but they didn't do that. They went so far as to worshiping their gods and marrying into these people, having kids with people, worshiping their gods and their idols. But, that was a common thing. They'll do great things. They'll go out and do God's will, serve God, and then all of a sudden they'll fall back into their simple ways. And the same thing with us. It's common. If you think about it, when we were kids, our parents would tell us to do something, and or don't do something, and we do it. We'll be good for the next couple of hours, or maybe a day or something. And then we'll go back and do it again, So we have that same thing in us. We get great things. God has allowed us to do great things, but sometimes we fall back. Yeah. We fall back. So after they take over this land, the Israelites began to go back into their sinful nature. Another common thing for the Israelites is they were always enslaved or always being ruled over by somebody. That's because they kept going back into their sinful ways, and God used these nations that are around them to rule over them and enslave them. But another common thing is God always delivered them.
Yes.
God always delivered them. When the Israelites reached out and cried out to God, He would deliver them from their enemies. So at this point, they captured the land, and at this time, when they don't go back into their sinful ways, God will raise up a leader for them. At this time, they were judges. We would call them judges. And today we're going to talk about Ehud. So again, the Israelites, they take over this land, and that God has given them, promised them way back hundreds of years ago through Abraham. They take over this land, and instead of rooting out all the nations in the land, they didn't do that. They allowed them to live. So what God did was He used these nations to chastise them, to test them.
Yes.
So the Israelites, so again, they begin, once they start capturing this land, they begin to mingle with all these nations and start serving their gods. And they pretty much, they forgot about the Lord. They forgot about the Lord their God. And they did evil in the sight of the Lord. So this time, God gave Israel over to the nation of Moab. So they will be captured, God will deliver them. And then here's another time where at this point in time, they were captured by Moab, and the king is named Eglon. And they were under the rule of Moab for 18 years. For 18 years, they served King Ehud. Every year, while they were under this king, every year they would take tributes to the king. So they would take some things, almost like tax. Every year they would take of their possessions and take it to the king. To show them that hey, you're the king. You're our ruler. So they would do that every year. But the people were suffering. So they kept crying out to God. They kept crying out to God in this time. So God raises a judge or a leader, his name is Ehud, to deliver them from King Ehud. And this is where we start our lesson today. And the lesson again is Judges chapter 3, verses 15 through 25 and 29 through 30. And I'm going to read out the end of the So here we are. Israelites have been captured and they're under the rule of Moab, and this is 18 years, 18 long years. That's what happens when we go back in sin. That stuff hurts us for a long time. For a long time. Sometimes from generations to generations. But they've been captured and they're under this king for 18 long years. And I'm going to read chapter 3, starting at verse 15, which reads, and I'll be virgin. Again, the Israelites cried out to the Lord, and He gave them a deliverer. Ehud, a left-handed man, the son of Gera, the Benjamite. And one thing I learned while I was studying is the Benjamites, they were known to have left-handed people in the family, the Benjamites, in their tribe. They were known to have left-handed people. And I thought, like, I'm left-handed, and my father's left-handed. So, it kind of makes me understand that, there's a limit. So that was just, something, that was interesting. So again, he was a left-handed man, the son of Gera, the Benjamite. The Israelites sent him with tribute to Eglon, king of Moab. So again, they're going out to send tributes to the king. A year is the thing, they have a company of people going out to sing and tributes. Verse 16 says, Now Ehud had made a double-edged sword, about a cubit long, so about 18 inches long, which he strapped to his right thigh under his clothing. He presented the tribute to Eglon, king of Moab, who was a very fat man. After Ehud had presented the tribute, he sent on their way those who had carried it. But on reaching the stone image near Gilgal, he himself went back to Eglon. And so, the Bible don't tell us much about Ehud. All we know is that he's a leader. If you can think of maybe an Israelite leader, he's probably, someone, obviously he was a courageous, great leader, and God used him to deliver Israel on the 18th year while they were under the rule of King Eglon, Moab. So Ehud goes with this company to the king to get tributes. Nearly king, giving the king. And it says that Ehud grabbed the sword, a knife, and he puts on the side. So after they give tributes, they leave, and they get to Gilgal, and Ehud tells them, keep going, I'm gonna go back. So Ehud goes back by himself. So it says but on reaching the stone images near Gilgal, he himself went back to Eglon, King Eglon, and said, Your Majesty, I have a secret message for you. So this had to have been a very secret message, because what he does is he sends the people out to hear his message. Verse 20. Or still in verse 19. So Your Majesty, I have a secret message for you. He says, the king said to his attendants, leave us. And they all left. Ehud then approached him while he was sitting alone in the upper room of his palace and said, I have a message from God for you. Yeah. Ehud approached him while he was sitting alone in the upper room and said, I have a message from God for you. Still in verse 20, as the king rose from his seat, Ehud reached with his left hand and drew the sword from his right thigh and plunged it into the king's belly. Even the handle sank in after the blade, and his bowels discharged. Ehud did not pull the sword out, and the fat closed the skin over. Then Ehud went out to the porch. He shut the doors of the upper room behind him, and he locked them. After he had gone, the servants came out and found the doors, found the upper room locked. So he comes back. He tells the king, hey, I got something to tell you. So he tells his guests, leave. And then, at this opportune time, Ehud stabs him, pulls his knife and stabs him, and kills him right then and there. So much to where it was so quick to where he didn't scream or anything, So he stabs him, kills him, and he walks out. He closes the door, locks it, and he walks out. So he's gone now. So nobody knows nothing. So the guards are there. They're there. Verse 24 says, after he had gone, the servants came and found the doors of the upper room locked. So the servants were there, because they had already left out because they were still telling the secret. So he leaves, locks the door. So they said he must be relieving himself in the inner room of the palace. Verse 25 says, they waited to the point of embarrassment. But when he did not open the doors of the room, they took a key and unlocked them. they saw their Lord falling to the floor, dead. So he kills the king, leaves, and he's gone. He goes back to his people. And they find out the king is dead. So they're like, what, Well, what Ehud does is he goes back to his people and gathers up his army, the Israelite army. And they go out, and God allows them to defeat the Moabites. Verse 29 says, at that time, they struck down about 10,000 Moabites, all vigorous and strong, not one escaped. Verse 30 says, that day Moab was made subject to Israel, and the land had peace for 80 years. And so God sent them a deliverer, and that's the common thing with Israel, and the common thing with us. We like I said, we go out, we'll do God's will, we'll serve God, but every now and then we'll fall back. And this is what happened to Israel. This is, all through the Bible, that's a common thing. They'll serve, and then they'll forget about God. And start, serving other gods, and start serving other idols. And God allows them to be punished, as in here. He allowed the king of Moab to capture them. And they served him for 18 years. And God sent a deliverer, a judge, a leader, a courageous man who goes and kills his king and goes and grabs his army, and they defeat the Moabites. So that's what God does in our lives. We go out, we teach, we preach. We try to do God's will. We pray, we read our Bible. But every now and then, sometimes we get tired. We get tired. And sometimes we fall back. But if you just cry out to God, as the Israelites did here, 18 years, they were in bondage. 18 years. God came, he delivered them, and they had peace on earth for 80 long years. Reach out to God, who will deliver you. And you will see your peace out of this. Thank you all for joining us this morning. Our next lesson, as we continue in obedience and success, our next lesson is God confirms Gideon's mission. God confirms Gideon's mission. That's Judges chapter 7. So yeah, if you want to read ahead, please go ahead. You need a book, a Bible study book. You just gonna pick one up. And I didn't have one when I studied, but I remember that you can also order this on Kindle Fire. So I ordered mine. It was like $7 when you get the online. So many ways to get this information, but I do encourage you because there's a lot more information in these books than just the scripture. It tells you in detail. Some things you didn't learn. Like I said, I learned that the Benjamites, they had left-handed people. They were known to have left-handed in the family. I'm left-handed. So, my daughter's left-handed. So, that it all fits together. Sure. It all fits together. And but that will conclude our lesson. If anyone online has anything, questions, comments, please send us a comment or send it in the chat. Thank you all.